One of my favorite things about fantasy sports is it's not just a debate about who's the best player anymore. There's strategy behind it. And in this video, we're going over 3 different ways you can build your roster to have success in the 2022 fantasy disc golf season. First strategy, and something that I think is the most important thing that you need to be looking at, is number of tournaments played. Now you're probably thinking, well, duh, most of the pros play in all the tournaments anyways, though. Well, that's where you're wrong. Currently, only 7 have released schedules where they're hitting all 19 events for fantasy disc golf. Here is a look at some of the top players who have released their schedule for the 2022 season and how many tournaments they're playing in this year. As you can see, the total is 19 with 15 Disc Golf Pro Tour events plus the 4 majors. Trickled down the list, 18, 17, 16, and there are down to, there will be some pros that are only playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is a big factor when we're talking about fantasy disc golf. I've talked at nauseum about Eagle McMahon and him missing multiple events to start the year, and how you're going to have your first round pick for the Las Vegas Challenge, and then you're not going to be able to play him for multiple weeks. And I think that's going to hurt a lot of people if you do not construct your roster accordingly. So one of the things that I want to point out is it's okay to draft people who are missing time as long as you match them with somebody who is either playing in the tournaments that they're not, or loading your team with people who do play all 15 events or all 19 events. This is going to help you fill in those missing tournaments from some of your star players a little bit easier. One of the other strategies that you can do is look at local pros or regional pros who don't necessarily tour year-round, but fill in those gaps for your star players. Guys like James Proctor, who usually sticks to the West Coast tournaments, or somebody like Andrew Fish, who generally sticks to the Midwest to East Coast swing. So looking at people's normal, typical tour schedules is going to be a huge factor in fantasy disc golf and how you should construct your team. We do have one European on this list who is playing a full U.S. tour. He has been one of my favorite late round pickups because a lot of the other Europeans are only coming over for a stretch. But Albert Tam is scheduled to play in all 19 Pro Tour events, and should be a pretty steady scorer for me, and you, if you pick him up throughout the entire year. So real quick, I want to go through kind of a mock draft to show you exactly what I'm thinking here with the matching a player who is missing some time with players who have a full schedule. Most of your drafts we're going to see Wysocki go 1, Macbeth go 2, and McMahon go 3. This is pretty common, but as we know, all 3 of these guys aren't playing full schedules. But Calvin Heimberg is. Same with Kevin Jones. Now Dickerson is missing a few as well. So this is where, when you're coming back around, you should be looking at other pros who are maybe who are filling in your missing events, or creating a good balance between your stars. With Dickerson here in the 6th spot, I'm not necessarily going to want to go grab a guy like Nate Sexton, because in total they're missing 9 events. But grabbing a Kyle Klein, who won't miss a single event this year, is a great counterpiece to Dickerson. Jones, who's having a full schedule as well. You could take that shot on Sexton if you think he is worth that risk, because you already have a guy who is playing a full season. Or Matty O, which I actually have in one of my leagues, is Jones and Matty O. I think they are a great combination. Matty O is playing a more full schedule than he normally does. But with Jones going full tour and Matty O missing a little bit of a stretch, I think these are a great, safe choice to match up with each other. And this isn't to say that you can't just go full schedules. Go grab a Heimberg and a Jones if you can, if he doesn't get picked, or Conrad. Not having any misses is a great way to have an advantage over the other teams. This so far is missing 0 tournaments. We've got Jones and Orm is going to be missing 3. Dickerson's missing 4. Now, we've got Eagle here. Let's say you think Sexton is the next best guy, and you're just picking, I want the best guys on my team. Well, McMahon is missing 4, Sexton's missing 5. You're going to be missing 9 tournaments between your top 2 guys, and this team here is missing 0. And basically what this means is you're going to have to play guys off of the waiver wire, so guys not drafted, because you're going to have to pick somebody up, more than likely, to fill in for one of your top guys, which can hurt you quite a bit, because Calvin and Conrad are going to be top 15 in most events. Somebody that you're picking up, like I said, James Proctor, or even I don't know, Austin Hoop, Andrew Fish, those type of players, they're not top finishers most of the time. And so it's really going to hurt your overall score. So this is definitely something to take a look at. And this can be remedied later in the draft. If you have 6 picks, you can find out, like we said, McMahon's missing the Texas swing. Go find somebody who performs well in that Texas swing, and maybe they don't play a full tour, but they play the Texas swing. You can take him in the 5th or 6th round later in the draft to fill in that spot. But it's something that you need to be aware of, or you're going to be missing out on a lot of points very quickly from your big stars. So that is the first strategy on roster construction, is to focus on building a roster where you are not missing as many tournaments as the other teams around in your league. Strategy number 2, and these are all going to be things that you're going to want to take into account, but can help you construct your team in a way to kind of maximize your potential, is to mix a Garrett Gurthie with a James Conrad, because Conrad's going to struggle earlier in the year when they're playing that West Coast swing with the big open courses, but Gurthie performs well on those. Same with if you get Eagle in the first round, it might make sense to grab a couple of Woods golfers later in the draft to make sure that you have kind of that buffer towards the end of the year where Eagle doesn't necessarily do as well in the deep woods. And so he might, instead of finishing top 5 in every event, drop down to that 10-15 spot. But if you have a Woods golfer who averages a 30 in those open courses, but bumps up to a 20 spot in the Woods, it evens each other out, kind of bringing your team together. But if you have all big arm guys, once they get into the Woods, your team is going to really struggle. So you need to make sure that you have a balance of guys who are going to perform well on each of the areas that they play on. The third strategy for roster construction is having a mix between high variance and consistent players. Now, you can absolutely load one way or the other, but it is good to recognize what type of guys you're drafting are. If you draft guys like James Conrad, Chris Clemens, Matty O, they are low bogey players, but they generally don't pop off that often for those top 5s. Conrad and Clemens, neither of them finished outside the top 36 last year, which is fantastic. but they're not going to get you those single-digit finishes very often. And so if you stack your team up with people who finish with like an average spot of 20, let's just say you have 5 guys and they average 20 spot, you're going to score a 100. But if you have high variance players and you have a guy that wins it, but then you also have a guy who finishes 9th and 20th and 30th and 40th, that can end up being the exact same score. It's just, how do you want your roster to look like? Now, of course, you would love it if you could have a team that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and gets a perfect score. But if you can have a couple of high variance guys who maybe get a 3rd and a 6th and mix it with a 20 and a 20 and a 30, there are ways to construct your roster that are going to help alleviate some of the high variance that is going to hurt you on a week-to-week basis. Throwing in a couple of guys who don't finish outside of that top 36 is going to help your averages throughout the entire year. Not everybody posts their schedules before the season starts, but you can find their upcoming schedules on pdga.com. So definitely use that to help start your drafts off right. Just to recap, tournaments are king. You need to have a team that's going to be playing events. Second, make sure to even out your team with good wood golfers and open field golfers. It's going to help you have a nice balance all year round. And lastly, please pay attention to high variance players. They are great to get you those single digit numbers, but having too many of them could have some major consequences with those big blow up weeks. Thank you for sticking around, and good luck in your fantasy disc golf drafts.